In the 1960s, a song could get you pulled off the radio, condemned in Parliament, or literally investigated by the FBI. Not for a music video, just for a line you could barely hear through a tiny speaker. In this video, we're dropping the needle on 10 tracks so dangerous, they got banned. Coming up at number 10, Louie Louie by the Kingsmen, 1963. On paper, Louie Louie is just a sloppy little party track from 1963. In reality, it sparked one of the strangest moral panics in music history. The recording is so rough you can barely understand the words, which is exactly why parents, teachers, and politicians convinced themselves the lyrics had to be filthy. Indiana's governor publicly called for it to be banned. Complaints poured in about obscene lines no one could quite agree on. It got so loud that the FBI opened an investigation and spent over 2 years trying to decode the supposed smut hidden in the mumbling. Their conclusion? The tape was too garbled to prove anything. No clear obscenity, just a messy garage band and mass imagination. Louie Louie shows how, in the 60s, you didn't even need explicit lyrics to get banned. You just needed adults terrified of what kids might be hearing. Sliding in at number 9, Eve of Destruction by Barry Maguire.
Yeah, the Eastern World, it is extraordinary.
1965's Eve of Destruction sounded like the end of the world set to a folk rock beat. While a lot of pop music was still singing about crushes and cars, Barry Maguire was spitting lines about Vietnam, nuclear war, racism, and political hypocrisy with zero sugarcoating.
You know my blood's so mad, it's like a wacky.
Radio stations did not love that. Some US programmers refused to play it outright, calling it unpatriotic and too negative for the airwaves. In the UK, certain stations and TV shows kept it at arm's length, worried it would pour gasoline on an already tense generation gap. Meanwhile, the song shot up the charts anyway, proving that the audience it was too dangerous for was listening the loudest.
Think of all the hate, still living inside us, it's never too late.
Eve of Destruction is one of the first big reminders that in the 60s, protest lyrics weren't just edgy, they were treated like a direct threat to the status quo, taking the number 8 spot. My Generation by The Who, 1965. Also from 1965, My Generation is basically the sound of teenagers kicking the door in. The Who weren't being subtle. Roger Daltrey stutters his way through the verses. The band crashes and burns around him, and then he drops the infamous line, "I hope I die before I get old." The BBC was not amused. They initially banned the song from airplay, officially claiming the stutter might offend listeners with speech impediments. Unofficially, the attitude, that raw, sneering, us versus them energy, wasn't exactly what polite British radio wanted on rotation. While the BBC held back, pirate radio stations hammered it, and My Generation still became one of the decade's defining youth anthems. It's a perfect example of how, in the 60s, you didn't need explicit sex or drugs to get censored. Sometimes all it took was a band saying out loud what millions of young listeners were already thinking. If you grew up blasting this song, drop how old you were the first time you heard it in the comments. And tell me if you think it would still get banned today. But if a garbled party song and a protest anthem were enough to freak people out, the next track proves even a love song could set off the censors. At number 7, we've got God Only Knows by the Beach Boys, 1966. God only knows what I'd be without you. It's wild that one of the most beautiful love songs ever recorded was once considered risky. God Only Knows floated out of Pet Sounds with angelic harmonies, French horn, and Carl Wilson sounding like he's singing straight from a dream.
I may not always love you, but long as there.
But in 1966, putting the word God in a pop song title was a big deal. Some U.S. stations in the Bible Belt refused to play it, worried it was disrespectful to mix sacred language with radio romance. Even the label was nervous at first, unsure if listeners would accept God in a love lyric.
I'd be without you.
Looking back, it's almost funny. This gentle, emotionally honest track got side-eyed while much wilder stuff slid through. God Only Knows shows how, in the 60s, even reverent spiritual references could be enough to get you quietly pushed off the air. Next up at number 6 is Let's Spend the Night Together by the Rolling Stones.
I feel so strong that I can't.
By 1967, everyone knew what the Stones were about. But this was the moment they said it out loud. No metaphors, no cute phrasing, just "let's spend the night together" repeated in the chorus. For a lot of radio programmers, that was one step too far. In the US especially, stations either banned it outright or just flipped the single and hammered Ruby Tuesday instead.
Don't you worry about what's on your mind, oh no.
The most famous clash happened on The Ed Sullivan Show, where the band was forced to change the line to "let's spend some time together." Mick Jagger rolled his eyes and over-enunciated the censored word just to make the point. The whole thing turned one fairly simple song into a lightning rod. It's the exact moment you can see 60s rock starting to pull the "we're not pretending anymore" lever on national TV.
I need you on that
Already remembering which stations in your hometown wouldn't touch certain songs. Hit like and subscribe. It genuinely helps the channel keep digging into the messy stories behind the music instead of just the hits everyone already knows. Cracking the top 5 at number 5, A Day in the Life by the Beatles.
I read the news today, oh boy.
On Sgt. Pepper, this is the grand finale, the weird, gorgeous art piece that pulls the whole record together. But when the BBC heard it in 1967, they zeroed in on one line: "I'd love to turn you on." In the middle of the drug panic, that was all they needed. Programmers read it as a straight-up reference to getting high.
About a lucky man who made the grade.
Add in the dreamy "I Went Into a Dream," the swelling orchestra, and the general psychedelic haze, and the BBC decided it was promoting drug use and pulled it from their playlists. What's ironic is that the song is about alienation, numbness, and the strangeness of modern life, not a fun trip. But to censors, nuance didn't matter.
Woke up, fell out of bed, dragged a comb across my head.
A Day in the Life became proof that even your biggest band in the world wasn't safe from a single wrong phrase. Coming in at number 4, another one by the Beatles from the same year, I Am the Walrus by the Beatles.
I am the Eggman. They are the Eggman.
If A Day in the Life was weird, I Am the Walrus was the Beatles asking, how far can we push this? Nonsense lyrics, radio static, choirs, and John Lennon basically trolling everyone who tried to decode his songs.
I'm he as you are, me and we are all.
But the BBC still found something to panic about. Lines like, "You've been a naughty girl, you let your knickers down," and "pornographic priestess" were enough for British censors to pull it from certain playlists. It didn't matter that the song is deliberately surreal, stitched together from Lewis Carroll, playground chants, and pure chaos.
Sitting in an English garden waiting for us.
To the establishment, this wasn't just silly psychedelia. It was proof that pop music had slipped into a strange, maybe dangerous world they couldn't control. I Am the Walrus turned baffling art into something they felt they had to censor, just in case. Down at number 3, Street Fighting Man by the Rolling Stones. By 1968, protests were erupting everywhere. Paris, London, American campuses, the streets outside the Democratic National Convention. Into that chaos drops Street Fighting Man, a song that sounds like a marching anthem even before you process the lyrics. US labels and radio stations took one look at the title, another at the headlines, and freaked out. Some major AM stations refused to play it, especially around the DNC clashes, afraid it would sound like the Stones endorsing riots or pushing kids into the streets. Now, what's interesting is that Mick Jagger's lyrics are more frustrated than revolutionary, wrestling with how much music can actually do in the face of real violence. But nuance didn't matter. In that moment, Street Fighting Man became the soundtrack censors were sure would light the fuse. Runner-up at number 2 is The Ballad of John and Yoko by the Beatles, 1969.
Way things are going, they're gonna crucify me.
By 1969, John and Yoko were already lightning rods, and this song poured gasoline on that reputation. The Ballad of John and Yoko is basically a travel diary of their wedding, bid-in protests and press circus, until it hits the line, Christ, you know it ain't easy. That one word got the single yanked from over 100 US stations. Program directors in the Bible Belt and beyond refused to air it, calling it blasphemous.
And in the dockets of Hampton, trying to get to Holland.
Some international versions and later broadcasts even edited or muffled the Christ to sneak it through. Coming just a few years after John's more popular than Jesus controversy, this track reminded everyone how thin the ice was whenever religion showed up in pop lyrics. One honest, frustrated exhale turned a simple rock and roll diary into a banned record.
You know how hard it can be, the way things are going.
And if that one word was enough to scare stations off, our final song is what happens when an artist stops hinting, stops softening, and stares the darkest part of the decade straight in the face. If you've ever heard this song uncensored on the radio, drop where you were listening from in the comments and say whether you think that single word still crosses a line today or would barely get a shrug. Next, topping the list at number 1, Heroin by the Velvet Underground.
I tell you, things aren't quite the same.
Where most 60s songs danced around taboo topics, Heroin kicked the door shut and described addiction head-on. No metaphors, no moral at the end, just a brutally honest first-person account of shooting up, numbness, and self-destruction over a droning, escalating backing track.
And I guess that I just don't know.
Radio programmers wanted nothing to do with it. Even though the song doesn't glamorize anything, it's ugly, chaotic, and uncomfortable. It was simply too direct. In an era already panicking about LSD and pot and lyrics, a track literally titled Heroin was unplayable. The Velvet Underground were never a chart band, but this song quietly rewired what rock could talk about.
You can't help me, not you guys, oh you sweet pretty girl.
It marks the point where 60s music stopped winking and started telling the truth. And the mainstream response was simple. Turn it off and pretend it isn't there. Loved revisiting the chaos of 60s censorship. Hit like, subscribe, and tell me which band was the most ridiculous. Then keep the rabbit hole going with the next video, where we jump into the 70s and break down the songs so wild, even that decade tried to shut them up.